Thanks for joining us for the session. Debbie Furlong and Anna Croyle are going to be leading us in a discussion about accessing data that is really readily available these days for everyone. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. Thank you.
All right, good to go. Maybe.
I had a very hard time hearing Ramin, but I think we're good to go.
All right.
Can you hear me better with this one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess this one is working really good. Yeah, please go ahead and get started. I'm going to get rid of this okay thing on that is blocking you from on the screen, but we're good to go. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us online and in person for accessing data, putting institutional resources to work for you. So I'm Anna Croyle. I'm the Data Visualization and Reporting Specialist.
And I'm Debbie Furlong. I direct the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment. And Anna has done the lion's share of the work on this presentation, but we've tag teamed, and just in our daily lives, we work back and forth around these different platforms and working on different techniques and ways to make information available to you. So we're going to have Anna kick it off and kind of set the structure and go through some stuff, and then I'll pop in here and there, and hopefully we'll end up with some time for you guys to ask questions if you have any.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. So a quick outline of our session today, we're going to talk about types of data. So you have some background about the data resources that we have access to. And we're going to go through three in particular. So the first is our Tableau dashboards on campus. The second is the SUNY BI dashboards. And then finally, IPEDS data, which we'll explain what that is if you're not familiar. And then as we're going through these data resources, Debbie will provide some in-depth examples of data applications. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. So defining the student educational experience, we can stick things in two buckets. So we have the student data, so the attributes we measure about a student. So how old are they, gender, what do they come in with? But to provide a different dimension to that, we have their curricular data, so their student enrollment and performance in courses.
This is a picture that I put together actually back kind of when we were training Anna, I think. I'm getting ready to bring Anna in. Sometimes it helps if you think about where the data comes from, because we're not sitting around an IRA making this stuff up. The data comes into our system, and the big system that filters most of our information is Banner. Banner is an enterprise application. But where does Banner get its stuff? Well, students complete an admission application. That's the kickoff for a lot of the student attribute data. They provide transcripts of their academic work from high school or from other colleges. So all of that goes into Banner. Once they become a student, they start registering for a course, and then they have student performance data. So throughout their entire history, their curricular achievements kind of come through our system. And they might live on campus, and housing data would come in. They might need financial aid, like 90% of them or more complete the FAFSA, which gives us information about their family's socioeconomic or financial, background. So there's a lot of places that information comes into Banner. And then what do we do with it? Well, we wrap up a lot of it and send it to SUNY. Those of you who are familiar with Ala Ghul, one of the analysts here, Ala spends her life cleaning up Banner data so that SUNY can use it. Well, how does SUNY use it? SUNY produces these SUNY BI dashboards, which we'll be showing you. SUNY also submits data on our behalf to the Department of Education, which becomes the iPEDS data set, which we'll also be talking about. I didn't put out here because at the time I did this, we didn't have Annie yet, so we didn't have our own local dashboards. I should put an icon of Anna, a little person. The other thing that we do with all this data is we create local SUNY Oswego dashboards, and that's the first set of data resources that we're going to be talking about.
All right, so kind of the theme that we want you to keep in mind is that everything we have access to, you can too. So Debbie covered the types of data that's coming in, and the kind of seeing behind the scenes will hopefully help you understand what kinds of data we can provide for you. So we're here to provide the technical support, but if you have a question that can be answered by this data, we want to help you get it. Okay, so the 3 resources we're going to talk about are the Tableau dashboards. So these are curated dashboards on campus that answer common data questions. We're also going to talk about the SUNY BI dashboards. So that's the SUNY data warehouse for all SUNY campuses. So good for comparative data between SUNY institutions. And then iPEDS data, which is a common set of variables across institutions nationwide. So good for larger institution trends or questions. Okay, so our first one, Tableau dashboards. So I think many of you are now familiar with Tableau. It's an interactive data visualization platform. And these dashboards are created to answer your common data questions. So how many students are in my major? How many students are in my college? What is our retention rate this year? And was it lower or higher last year? So these dashboards are there to cover some of those basic grounds, and hopefully to help familiarize you with the kinds of data that's out there. So we have those numbers about majors. What kind of other questions can we answer with it? And of course, we also want to balance privacy and usability with these dashboards, protecting the students that the data is about, that it remains anonymous, but also that it's useful, whether it's at a larger aggregated view or as we're filtering down through a more disaggregated lens. And to provide some context for these dashboards, we have public ones that everyone on campus can access, and then more private ones that have operational or more sensitive data. And of course, since these dashboards are curated to answer common questions, feedback is always very welcome and essential as we're shaping these dashboards to answer the questions that matter for you. So I just want to point you to our institutional data page, which links to everything you need for our data resources. So this is on the IR website, and the institutional data is right at the top. So this links to all our dashboards. So if you ever need to find a dashboard, just go here. So I'm going to show a few examples just to highlight the kinds of common questions people might have and why a dashboard is created the way it is. So for example, our fast facts dashboard is a very high level dashboard. So it's not really for filtering down to the program level or a question about a specific major, but it is good for those quick reference numbers. So if you want to know the number of degrees that we awarded last year, or the size of our freshman class this year, this is a good place to go. But it's not a good place for if you want to see if the English major went up or down. In contrast, we have our campus profile dashboard, which provides more information about productivity metrics. So it might be good if a department wanted to see how many student credit hours are actually from our majors versus how many are service credit hours, so not major students. And what if I want to compare this to a different department? So the kinds of questions you can answer with these dashboards vary on what we think that the user is going to ask. So with the fast facts one, we're not expecting departments to be comparing productivity at this level. But for the campus profile, we've allowed filters so that you're able to answer that. So dashboards answer common questions, but sometimes we need to go deeper. And hopefully by engaging with these dashboards, for example, the campus profile, you might think, I want to ask a deeper question about the student credit hours and how they're distributed across my department, for example. And that leads us into our first in-depth example.
Yeah, so when Anna and I were working on this, I thought a really great way to teach is to give an actual application. So this is an example of digging more deeply into student performance, which can be measured either by looking at an average grade or a grade on a set of courses or an average grade for a set of students, or the percent of students that pass a course or something. So student performance, but can we dig more deeply? So I decided to examine a policy question that I've often wondered. Does it matter if a student takes courses from full-time teachers versus part-time teachers? Does it matter? A lot of times this question can't really be studied easily because part-time teachers are selected to teach a different kind of course. Like in education, part-time teachers are doing a lot of the student teaching and the practicum, but they're not teaching the intro courses. So it's hard to make a comparison. But we have a few areas in our curriculum where there's a lot of work done by full-time tenured and tenure track people, and there's a lot of work done by ad hocs or part-times. English is one of those. So I pulled out a single course, English 102, and I asked the data the question, is there a difference in the GPAs of our students based on the teacher's status as being full-time or part-time? So it's like, well, it turns out that the full-time, the students in the full-time teacher classes for this 3 or 4 years that I looked at do have a slightly higher average GPA than students in the part-time classes. So then I thought, well, and this is the digging deeper part. It's like, well, what if the part-time faculty had different students? What if for some reason, the really high quality students all knew to take these certain teachers and other students didn't know that? So I thought, well, I better control for or look at something that measures the ability of students or the expectation that we would have for them to perform at a certain level. So I said, well, how did these students do in all of their courses that semester? This is a very common metric that I use to control when I'm looking at student performance. It's like, how does a student perform in math? Well, if it's a C student in general, a C would be a great grade. So this idea of controlling for their overall performance that semester. So I did that, and then that enabled me to say, well, so what is the difference? What's the boost? Well, the boost turns out to be statistically significant. That controlling for their grades in all classes, students who had a full-time professor for English 102 did significantly better. So then I thought, well, boy, I wonder if this boost is consistent across different types of students that we pay attention to for equity concerns. If the boost is significant, I would hope that it would not differ by the fact of the student being a low-income student or being an underrepresented student. Sometimes when we see biases like this, they get exacerbated by students who bring in addition, other risk factors. So that's what the graph on the right-hand side looks at. The digging deeper here is that I am able to, Anna and I are able to look and say, okay, this student got this grade in the class. They got this grade overall. And I know this student maybe is a Pell recipient. They come from a low-income family. Maybe is a first-generation student. Maybe is from an underrepresented background. So we are able to add those student attributes because we have that information here. And you don't have that information on the faculty member or the department roster. And then doing the actual analyses would be kind of, painful, right? If you're trying to do it one course at a time or something. So I was able to go ahead and do that and to calculate the size of the boost for these different categories of students or types of students. And the size of the boost is statistically the same. So even though having a part-time teacher is a bit of a disadvantage, the size of that disadvantage doesn't vary based on the attributes that you, the student. So what we have here is possibly a pedagogy issue, but not necessarily an equity issue. So that's my illustration of how digging deeper can help you understand the scope and shape of some differences in your data.
All right, so that was our first data resource and kind of launching pad to dig deeper. So our second resource is the SUNY dashboards. So SUNY's data warehouse and analytics tool, you can find it at suny.edu/analytics. And it's really great for comparisons to peer institutions. So I'm going to do the basic example, what you can do with some dashboards that are already there. And then Debbie will provide how she might use this data for a more in-depth application. So, for example, this is a screenshot of the academic programs trend, and I'm looking at the tab enrollment trends by program. So I just chose randomly the communication baccalaureate awards for Oswego in fall 24. And this is also a good point to point out that this includes zip codes as a way to compare the program taxon. So SIP is classification of instructional programs, and it's a way to standardize like the types of programs. So instead of saying English major here and then study of English literature at a different school, like they're not that different. So we can compare those across schools, even if the exact program name is a little different. And then since this is SUNY BI, we can also compare the same trend at Geneseo in the same period. And we can stick them side by side if we want to see that 6-year enrollment trend of communication. All right, and that leads us to our in-depth example.
Anna, right now I can't see the graphs.
So I'll
Oh,
go
I
through them
gotcha.
for you.
Okay, so this in-depth example, actually, Anna, can you back up one screen? Is that going to really screw you up? One more.
Sure.
One more. Okay, if you look on this screen at the top, or the first dark blue line, sort of in the right-hand corner, you can see where you can go home, you can go to the catalog, you could mark favorites. The dashboard pull down is how Anna selected the academic programs dashboard. To the right there is a button called Create. Most of you will not have that Create. Thank you, Anna. That Create option. What we, the analysts, have we're given the right to dig into the data that's behind all of SUNY's not all, but most of SUNY's dashboards. So by digging behind, we can put the pieces together differently than they have put them together, for the dashboards. Okay, now go and get my example. So this in-depth example is an example where I've dug into one of the SUNY data sets that tracks the grades that students get in every course that they take at every SUNY institute every semester for the past 20 years. It's a big, big data set. And I decided that I wanted to learn more about math. College math is hard. It's hard for everybody. Our students have a hard time, getting through it and getting the grades they want. But I was curious to know, is it as hard for everybody? Or is it harder or easier here? The words harder and easier are obviously value-lated because all I really have is information about whether or not students passed the class or the grade they got. So you just have to bear with me as I use my loose language. What I ended up deciding to do would be to look at the DFW rates for students in lower level math courses that they take when they are in their first semester. So it's fall 21 or fall of 22 or fall of 23. I took 3 years, smushed it all together to iron out any kind of weird 1-year inconsistencies. The DFW rate is the percent of students who start the class, but then at the end, they have a D grade, which they'll get credit for it towards the 120 credits, but they wouldn't be moving towards the required 2.0 average. So they get a D, or they flunk it and don't even get the credit, or they withdrew from it. So they were in the course as of the official enrollment census date a couple weeks into the term, but by the end, they've withdrawn. So I said, okay, what percent of these students had a DFW for Oswego versus all students going into any of the 2-year community colleges in SUNY versus the other comprehensives or technical colleges? I smushed those two types together. And then the doctoral schools. Well, Oswego's rate looks pretty high. And our DFW rate appears to be closer to that of a community college than the other technical schools. Okay. Then I decide, well, I'm going to look at average grade. And I'm going to check, and I want to dig more deeply. I want to disaggregate some of what I've looked at, because I know we've been really worried about this DFW rate. We've been working on it. So I looked at, and I switched to the average GPA because I wanted a more refined dependent variable, a variable that has more variance. Getting a DFW is a yes, no thing. Getting an average grade has more variance, literally. So I see two things here. This is the average math grade for those same students in those same courses. The two things I see, one is that Oswego's grades are low. You know, we are more like community colleges than we are tech schools, and the students going to the doctoral schools are kicking it out of the park. The other thing I see is that things really did look quite better in fall of 23. Which does not surprise me because I know we have been working on these issues. So it's very heartening. The next thing I did was really driven by what I saw there about the students at the doctoral schools. And you see students at the doctoral schools have these much higher grades. The very next thing that we think is, well, maybe SUNY Oswego students have lower grades in math because they are coming out of lower high school GPA experience levels. Maybe we literally have students who are more used to getting a B, and that's their expectation, and that's kind of what they go for, and that's their B students. And everybody that goes to, you know, to Stony Brook, and they're all A students, so they're going to get A's. So I decided to go, and the database has this. I dug more deeply, and I pulled out and I disaggregated the students based on their high school GPA. So of the SUNY Oswego students who have a very low high school GPA, what average grade did they get? And then what about the middle ones? And what about the really high ones? So on this graph, SUNY Oswego students are the dark green. And you'll see two things. One is, as expected, students' grades in math are very correlated with their high school GPA. Predicting what a student's got to do in college, the best predictor you have is how well they did in high school. So that's the first thing. All of these things go up as we disaggregate by more and more highly, I don't know, experienced, had better experiences in high school, grades go up. The second thing is more troubling, which is at every level of high school GPA, SUNY Oswego students have lower average math grades. Why is this? I don't know. You know, the next question to ask of the data set would probably be, you know, data set would come back to me and say, go talk to the math faculty. I've sort of exhausted my ability to learn useful and interesting things. And we need to sort of go back to the professors to figure out why this might be happening and why and what we might want to do about it. So to wrap it up, this was an example of showing how we have access to attributes of students across the system, and that sometimes in some cases, it's useful for us to actually go and look and see how our students are performing within the context of that academic domain in other schools and around the system. Okay, now we're going to kick it up to even the sort of even more highly aggregated, our third data resource. Anna, were you going to talk about this one, or did you want me to talk about it?
I can start us off and you
Okay.
can do the examples.
Good, very good.
Okay, so IPEDS is the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. And it's, I mean, basically every accredited institution in the nation is submitting a bunch of data on about 150 common variables. So it's really useful for us because we can compare those common variables at that level. So it's useful for larger scale institutional level policy assessment.
Some of you, your exposure to iPads may have come over the last couple of years when my office has been providing departments with information about universities in the country that are producing PhDs. They're awarding PhDs in specific fields to relatively high numbers or high percentages of potential faculty of color. For the last couple of years, whenever a department has a search for a new colleague is approved, we've been trying to go into the IPEDS data and identify schools that we want to make sure SUNY Oswego recruits at. We don't want to accidentally overlook. And well, anyway, so it's something that we've been doing. We provide this file. It's like, okay, well, here's 10 schools that have relatively high percentages or high numbers of Black students completing PhDs or Hispanic students completing PhDs. Another example of a time when you may have interacted with IRA, or that'll make sense, you know, to really understand why this might be useful. When we begin to prepare or thinking about a new program or moving into a new area, one of the first things we need to know is who in our target competition area is already delivering that curriculum. When we brought up the integrated professional studies major, for example, we went out into IPEDS and we looked at all the universities and their degree productivity in a set of zip codes that cover what, you know, general studies or interdisciplinary studies that are sort of not specified by a sort of a common discipline. So we found what schools are already in that space. We did the same thing when we started talking about nursing. So the background research that IRA provided to academic affairs, when they began thinking, should Oswego try to mount a nursing program? The first thing we did was we looked and it's like, who is producing nurses? And how far do you have to go if you're an Oswego County person or a Syracuse person? Where can you go if you are graduating from high school and you want to become a nurse? There's all kinds of other stuff. I mean, IPEDS is rich and it's very, very useful for higher education policy analysis. But those are a couple of example of places that you may have heard IPEDS data. Okay, I think I was gonna, do the next one. Another area that stands out as a separate kind of research area for me is what I call scholarship of teaching and learning, or SOTL research. IRA, our office, can provide context to faculty who are very actively making modifications to their own teaching, and they want to monitor the impacts of those modifications. I mean, teaching is itself an intervention, but if you do it the same way year after year after year, there's not much there to study. But if you decide to provide students with access to an additional resource, and then you want to know if the students who used that available online tutor guide or whatever it is, did the students who used that perform better or not compared to students who didn't use it? You're now asking a research question, which a faculty member probably, you could do some of that analysis on your own. You would want to do a survey and ask students how often they interacted with it, or you'd want to scrape that data out of whatever that application is. But IRA can provide additional context because we have access to all of the attributes of those students. So in that example, where students have the right or the ability to go and use this additional resource, who actually used that additional resource? Was it the wealthier students? Was it the poorer students? If there's a cost involved, controlling for students' Pell Grant status or their family income could be a very, very powerful insight. The other thing that, well, two other things that you can do with SOTL research that our office can help with. One is if your research actually supports and requires quantitative or statistical analysis, we can do that. You don't have to go and break out your stats book and remember what is the p-value or the t-value, which one do I want here? We do this all the time, so we can pop into that. The other thing is that if you're doing this research and you want to share the results, either in a publication or at a conference, you may need to get permission. You probably do need to get, not permission, but approval from our human subjects research, our human subjects board. And IRA can help guide you through that process. We can help you make the decisions about when to submit that IRB request. And if you have questions about how to complete it, it's getting IRB approval to do SOTL research is not hard. This is not high risk research. We're generally not doing things to students that would really be considered super risky. So we can help you out with that and help you get to the answers, both so that your pedagogy is better, but also so that you can share your positive gains with others.
All right, so to sum up, in terms of the resources, go to our institutional data page to find any resources that we've talked about. We also link to SUNY BI as well if you have a hard time finding that. For Oswego data, you can interact with our Tableau dashboards to find your common questions answered, and also to familiarize yourself with the kinds of questions that we can help you answer. And more operational data is available through Tableau Cloud, which requires a license. And then for comparisons between SUNY campuses, use SUNY BI. And then for larger assessment or scholarship, we can use IPEDS data to support your work. And really the overarching theme of this is that we have access and techniques and skills that it's our job to help support you with. And we're here to support you with that.
So like Anna said, we have access to all this information But I personally haven't actually been in a classroom, except for like a guest lecture here and there, in a long, long time. So generating the hypotheses about what would be most useful to ask of the data is very hard for me. We rely on the faculty and staff who are out engaging directly with the students. IRA relies on you to help us drive the data. Without the faculty and staff helping us get in and drive this data, our work has less value and it's less fun. So, you know, it's more than just, oh, we welcome you asking us to dig stuff up out of the data. We depend on you to help us make value out of just a bunch of data. So I think we're ready for questions now. I don't know, do we want to unshare so that we can see each other's faces?
Sounds good. Debbie, just I know your office provides some support for self-studies for academic departments. Maybe you can speak to that for a few minutes, because obviously we have some program directors and potential chairs here that may be interested in hearing that.
Yes. So academic self-study for most programs occurs on a 5-year cycle. And the practice that we have here at SUNY Oswego is there's a set of variables or metrics that we have decided might be useful for a department to have on hand to review as they begin doing their self-study. In the spring, we pull this set of metrics together and we look at programs that are going to be scheduled to do self-study in the following year. And we deliver this sort of pre-packaged, it's pretty big, it's like 20 pages now, set of data to the departments. The self-study is not intended to look at all the tables and say, oh, our enrollments went up because of this reason or went down because of this reason. Like just your enrollment trend is the first metric, right? How many students do you have? The reason that we provide this pre-packaged set of data is so that if the program self-study needs to or decides to address enrollment trends, you already have that, and that idea that enrolled student is measured the same way for biology as it is for mathematics, as it is, you know, for every other program, so that we have a standard understanding about as many of these metrics as we can. 4 or 5 years ago, we went through the self-study, you know, this pre-packaged set of data, and we really disaggregated a lot of stuff and provided several more standardized metrics, really to look at 2 different dimensions. One is we added in a lot more stuff about student performance. % of students who are completing a course with a C or better became one of the key metrics, for example. So we added in more student performance stuff. The second thing that we did is we provided disaggregation by gender and by not all of the disaggregated racial and ethnic categories, but we do provide disaggregation of almost every metric by whether or not a student is an underrepresented minority or a majority. We are still slightly white majority here at SUNY Oswego. So we provided some breakdowns so that if a program decides that an important theme of their self-study is to interrogate itself about the performance of underrepresented minorities, you'll have that data on hand and it's already been measured in a standardized way. You don't have to remake the wheel and in terms of figuring out, well, should we use fall data? Should we use spring data? How do we, well, what's the difference between a lab class or a regular class? What are we going to use? A lot of those sort of defining questions are just baked into this data set. So Ramin, you've seen some of these and you've worked with a lot of them. Is there anything else that you think we should add at this point for this audience about those self-study data sets?
No, I think that's exactly what I thought people should know. To be aware that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, IR already prepares that and provides that. And there are contexts in which we need that when we do program development. So I think you touched on that too. I mean, when we're doing significant changes by adding tracks and so on, sometimes some of that same data is necessary to make the argument of why we need additional resources and potentially better serve students. So, so I think that package becomes very critical, but then it also, some subset of that may become necessary in other contexts that people are working on.
I'm seeing a question down in the chat. Hi, Tyrion. Could we discuss the ways, okay, here's the question. Could either of you discuss the ways in which you have worked or want to work with staff, non-teaching departments, regarding this data? Out of curiosity, do any of these data resources house information about faculty and staff members on campus? Okay, let me give you these two separate questions. The second question, let me answer first. Yes, the faculty and staff, there is some information in SUNY BI about who the staff are. And, you know, we don't do a ton with that. It's very, very hard, for example, to standardize, and we don't have access to other campuses, faculty and staff data sets. So we can't do nearly as much comparable stuff. But we do have a practice. We have SUNY's practice is to snapshot the entire state employee base around mid-December. So everybody who's on the payroll, it's the 17th payroll, which is like the second week in December, first week in December. Whenever that is, everybody that's on that payroll gets locked into a warehouse data set that SUNY then uses to generate our IPEDS data for the US government. But I've been drawing down that data set. So it's insane. Our data goes to SUNY and then it comes back to me. And then providing it to Anna so that we can stack up every year, one year after the next, and generate trends. And we do have a dashboard. We have two, actually. One that really looks at faculty, at full-time faculty, their professor, associate professor, assistant professor by department. So you can kind of look at it, whatever you need to look at about those and some gender breakdowns. And then a second one looks at more the overall, the total number of faculty, the total number of staff. You know, I use the word, and I'm doing this because of my work with Tyrion, who asked this question. I use the word state employees. There are employees colleagues that we interact with constantly who are not in this data set. Many people in the in Bill's area who work at the Research Foundation, the Oswego Foundation people they're not state employees, they're employees of the foundation. So they're not in there. And many of the employees who feed our students day in and day out work for a contractor. I don't know who has our contract for food service, but those folks are not in our data set. And that's important because a lot of our a lot of our poorer employees and employees of color are in those categories that are not grabbed by the state employee thing. Okay, Tyrion's first question, how is this stuff ever relevant for non-teaching departments? Yes, when a non-teaching department has, well, there's two areas that I work a lot with departments that are not actually the academic departments. One is around survey research. You know, because we survey students and we gather opinions about students, and a lot of those opinions have to do with their whole experience inside and outside of the classroom. So oftentimes by interaction, I'm thinking of the fact that last week I wrote to Tyrion's colleague Lillian Evans over in Tarandaflow about some new data that we just got in from a survey we did in the spring, and that, you know, I wanted Lillian to have that because she works really closely with kind of tracking and figuring out how to improve the student experience, not just for students of color, but for all of our students. So the survey research is one area. The other thing, though, is that many of our non-teaching departments have involvement or are working in areas where they still aspire to improve students' academic performance. The example I'm thinking of is, I think it was just today, actually, I got an email from Sarah Rivior in housing asking, can you go through and split out? I want to know if different housing locations, not just East Campus and West Campus, but the different housing units, you know, Cayuga and Onondaga, do they have different performances in terms of retention rates, either from last year into this fall, or even from this fall into being registered for the spring? And then Sarah went on and she goes, like, for example, this one department, all the freshmen were taking this learning community. So if we learned that those students, we would predict that this percentage of them would have retained, but if more than that were retained, we might conclude that at least the living learning community isn't making it worse. It may be making it better, right? So this is an example of a time when Sarah Rivior, a non-academic department, it's housing, but all of our non-academic departments exist to improve our students' performance and progress towards that degree. Okay, we have a new question coming in. I hope that answered Tyrion's question. He said thank you, so I guess I did okay.
By the way, this is probably going to be our last one because we're basically out of time. So
Okay.
thank you. Go ahead and answer the question from Casey.
Yes, this last one looks more like a statement where Casey's contributing. Because OLS uses SUNY BI dashboards to assess our student staff demographics. We try to match the proportion of students who are on campus. This semester, we are seeking more Black males and fewer females of Asian background. So that data from SUNY BI is driving their outreach and hiring. So thank you, Casey. That's a great example of how a non-academic department is using these resources to drive their own practice in a certain way. And I think it's time for us to say thank you and to send you off. We look forward to hearing from all of you with all of your research questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation, both Anna and Debbie. Really, thank you very much. And we'll be starting another session in about 10 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Anna.
I'm going to stop recording.